If you're aware of Ace Attorney, you probably heard about the
Honestly, the reason
This is so stupid that I love it.
because this is
The
not
idea that the
scientific.
third case is the worst case in its respective game. A concept so widespread, even Danganronpa took it. But why is that? What makes a case being the third case the worst one? And going further into that, is it even true? Obviously, some of the most infamously bad cases are third cases, but that alone doesn't deduce that dilemma. In order to truly understand the reason, let's break down how Ace Attorney structures its cases. Ace Attorney is split between 4 or 5 cases, and each case usually has a typical role. The first case is the tutorial case, a very simple and easy case, there to introduce the player to the mechanics, but also set up the central theme and conflict for the game. It's the second case where we get introduced to the main game and all of our main characters, assistants, detectives, fellow attorneys, and prosecutors. This is also where we are first able to investigate and move around the world and dive further into the main conflict like the Fae Clan drama. The second case is very much the true world building case of the bunch. Meanwhile, the fourth case for those that have it is pretty interesting, especially post trials and tribulations. This case is often set up for the final case, providing us with crucial information whether through a flashback case or it being directly before / linked to the final case. Which, speaking of, we have our final case. Pretty self-explanatory, it's the most ambitious, grand, and usually the best case in the game. It converges everything the entire game has been building up to for one massive narrative dump. These cases have a solid flow between each one. For instance, the first turnabout sets up the Mia and Phoenix connection for Turnabout Sisters, which sets up the Fae Clan drama and the Edgeworth confrontation for Turnabout Goodbyes, which the consequences of Edgeworth's arrest and reveal of his corrupt trial dealings will impact the events of Rise from the Ashes. There's clear ties between each one of these cases that impact the next. And then there's the third case. The third case is in an awkward spot. Smack dab in the middle right after the exposition, but right before the story shifts into high gear. So it could feel like a roadblock in an overarching story with it being essentially filler. But that in of itself doesn't mean the case is bad. Filler is important to solidify key characters, relationships, and individual development. However, that inconsequential nature of the third case is where Ace Attorney loves to get wacky with it. Here they delve into situations that can only happen in Ace Attorney. Hey, let's make a case about the TV hero actually killing the villain. Let's make a murder around magic, a circus, and flying murderers. Let's make an Ace Attorney parody in our Ace Attorney game. So, the third case is like a little side quest to progress character relationships and arcs centered around unique scenarios and settings. Obviously, these cases fluctuate from game to game, but typically this is how the games have been structured. And looking at this formula, you can kinda see what the third case would be highlighted as a low point. It's the most fillery among all of the cases, the least consequential, while being the most experimental makes it subject to failure. With a lot of these cases being the least grounded and most messily written. But that still doesn't explain it. For one, despite the original trilogy having the third cases be filler, future games have arguably made them the most relevant cases to mixed reception. Investigations we don't even meet our main cast till the third case. And arguably the unique setting and premise is the best part of them. Plus they aren't lacking in depth or emotion. Some of the most complex witnesses come from these cases. Fundamentally, it's not really the issue. In fact, when we look at the most infamous bad third cases, what weighs them down are specific key qualities or nitpicks. Big Top has the flying murder, grating characters and music, and creepy subplot. Serenade has the bad game mechanics and constant flashbacks. And Kidnapped... okay, Kidnapped's just a bad case. It doesn't mean that without them they are that great, but a lot of these third cases just unfortunately have one or two more dated, distracting, or disturbing moments that are weighed more heavily against them than not because they're the third case. This really got me reconsidering the term. Certainly the most infamous bad cases come from the third case, but not really because of its design. Especially when, for every bad third case, there are an equal number of third cases you could argue are the best case in their games. Cases like Turnabout Legacy, The Runaway Room, and The Great Departed Soul. All are phenomenal cases, with a lot of other third cases being similarly solid. It's such a strange phenomena. The cases we are forewarned to be wary of has also been a seal of quality. This dichotomy between these cases I'd like to call the reverse third case syndrome. Games where the third case is definitively the strongest out of them. But how is this the case, pun intended? Well, we have to go back to the role the third case plays, as a bridge. It's in a nice spot where the characters are already established and not under the pressure of the entire narrative on its back. Its status to be standalone is part of its strength, and this comes with the case allowing for it to do unique stories and concepts. Turnabout Legacy has us solving a murder in present day and in a flashback while playing as Edward and his father, while also being set during a baking competition of all things. The Runaway Room, meanwhile, has the crime scene in the courtroom. Such a unique way of streamlining an investigation, especially when said crime scene evolves midway through the trial. These concepts are feasible because we're in a case isolated from the external needs for the game, and the case being able to exist relatively independently allows for these unique concepts to flourish. But again, that's the strength for most, if not all, third cases, and they have all come at mixed results, so what gives? Well, it helps that one of the major restrictions of these third cases has mostly been obsolete. Before, they were entirely disconnected from the narrative besides a couple lore drops and unnecessary feelings. But now, the third case has almost become essential for the overarching narrative. Introducing La Miroir or the British court system or Maya's Return or the entirety of the investigations cast. I'm not one to say that filler cases can't be great, but its renewed relevance adds magnitude to the case. Plus, they don't lose that individual uniqueness as mentioned previously. But mostly, these cases are just well written. They embrace the unique strengths of Ace Attorney, the wacky scenarios, but the equally emotional depth. Even for a case like Big Top, it covered the impact a beloved figure being suddenly killed would cause to others. Something another case Turnabout Reclaim transformed into one of the best cases in the series. And guess where that case was originally supposed to be? Remove all those strange qualities, and we can focus in on those unique but sincere stories third cases are stellar at. And in the same boat, these cases have been able to present some of the most emotionally complex characters. One-timers that have so much story isolated within the one case. And in terms of the cream of the crop, Tanjiro is one of the most tragic characters in the franchise, directly showing the consequences of the Von Karma way. The Runaway Room has one of the most despicable villains that leaves us and a hung jury conflicted over his guilt. And Dripper and Sith are two completely different sides of utter filth, where both of them slowly eroded each other over decades. These aren't major characters within the grand narrative, but that makes them feel even stronger. It contributes to the world building and makes our mission and journey feel that much more consequential. Our brief time with these side characters would greatly impact the stories of Miles, Eddie, Ryunosuke, Gina. They are a side misadventure, but they show a bigger world outside of the courtroom. And that's the thing. The third case is meant to expand the world. The events of these cases and their characters often won't return, but it makes the city we call Japanifornia feel that much larger. That there are actual people's lives at stake, and there's a much larger purpose for us to defend the weak. I just think this third case syndrome is overblown. There's some real stinkers, but even the worst of the worst has shown that conceptually it can be done right. And the risk that they take creates some of the most unique cases that, besides a couple nitpicks, are genuinely pretty good, and do well to spice up the monotony of the standard Ace Attorney trials. Serenade, despite its problems and a weird concept, had much more stakes than your average case. I liked the development of Clavier, La Miroir and Machi were great side characters, and the role Dorian faced showed how corrupt the legal system has gotten that they would arrest a blind child as the murderer. Risky for Turnabout, I'm sorry, this is a fun case. If you don't take it too literally, I think it's one of the most agitated cases in the series. I love Furio, Tigre, and Viola offering a dark, tragic twist to the Phoenix Maya dynamic, and I love how colorful the settings and really this entire case is. and Gumshoe has a nice arc finally being the hero. And Turnabout Samurai is genuinely just a good case. I know I've mentioned it's easy to overlook, but revisiting it, it's super strong. The idea that this was a crime of self-defense and the victim was really the instigator is so compelling. Plus, I think Phoenix shows great fight as an attorney here, allowing for a great bridge into Turnabout Goodbyes. Fix a little bit of the pacing, and this case is golden. And Turnabout Academy, okay, if I'm being honest, I'm not really the biggest fan of this case, nor am I right of Turnabout, and I don't really feel like revisiting it just yet. But even then, these cases have strong elements that people who love them more than me can easily defend. They're flawed but still have great highs. Point is, there's still a lot to like about all of these cases. It's not nearly as consistently bad as people may imply, so I don't think it's deserving of this curse levied at it. If anything, I'd like to propose a different case that falls victim to mediocrity. Let's talk about second case syndrome. The second cases have been as wildly inconsistent as the third ones. Turnabout Sisters being the first officially written case hasn't aged the best. Turnabout Corner similarly with even more weird dated aspects. Turnabout Airlines kind of falls under that same umbrella of the first three investigation cases of just kind of being alright. I'm probably one of the biggest Speckled Band defenders out there. Y'all, this is a good case, please trust me. But even I would admit it's easily the weakest in the first grade Ace Attorney. Likewise with a Clouded Kokoro and Captive Turnabout. Great fun cases, but they aren't nearly the best in their stacked games. And Monstrous is so mid. It's probably my least favorite case of all time. There are standouts like Reunion and Stolen Turnabouts, crafting great mysteries, characters, and lore elements, but the only case I could argue being the best in their respective game is the Magical Turnabout. And despite how great that case is, in the grand scheme of all Spirited Justice, it's pure filler. I think especially in the more modern games, it has shifted to the second case being the weakest link. I think a lot due to the games wanting continually rising stakes from case to case. So a lot of these second cases have become more fluff than relevant story, taking out that sour feel the original third cases had. And thinking about it from a gameplay perspective, these second cases are meant to be the easiest among the non-tutorial cases. If they aren't outright showing the killer, it's mostly rather easy to solve, removing some of the mystery to it, and it results in simpler, blander cases. But again, these aren't really bad cases, just like how the third cases have a good amount of solid to exceptional ones, and the rules of all these cases fluctuate between game to game. The Return of the Great Departed Soul was theorized to be a final case before it landed as a third one, so these arbitrary rules I structured are kind of useless. At the end of the day, the quality of each case is determined by you. A lot of the games don't even have the final case being the best one. Sometimes it's the third, the fourth, even the first case has been called the best in some games. Heck, sometimes the final case you could say is the worst. It's all subjective to your own opinion. So this whole third case syndrome is kind of a load of nonsense. Are there some really infamously bad cases? Yeah, but so too for all the other case classifications. Are there certain trends that may lean cases to a certain direction by definition? Sort of, but it's a lot of correlation and not causation. More so a couple bad apples spoiling the bunch. But then there's so many criticisms implied almost entirely exclusive to these third cases. It's nonsensical, illogical, unsatisfying. And while it may be kind of true, so is it in a lot of cases, even some of the best ones. I'm not calling these third cases perfect or masterpieces, far from it. But there are enjoyable elements to them that I think get overlooked. Ace Attorney as a whole has both fantastic and infuriating moments in writing. It's not mutually exclusive or even egregiously so to third cases. I don't know, it's something that as someone who's played a lot of Ace Attorney, it's something I've gotten used to. And it allows me to see a lot more of the positives and not be turned off by the negatives. Maybe it's why, ironically, I've started giving these cases more of a pass. Because they've been able to embrace that chaos that makes Ace Attorney not necessarily the best, but makes Ace Attorney Ace Attorney. In short, third cases have a lot of stellar cases, just like how there's a lot of great second cases or fourth cases. My favorite case in Dual Destinies is a DLC case, for crying out loud. So, like what you want, and well, dislike what you want too. But if we really want to be talking about curses, can we talk about how strange it is that every person Van Zieks prosecutes dies?